Trump's ex-lawyer storms the FBI archives. The documents he discovers expose a 30-year cover-up. The October rain hammered against the windows of Mike Cohen's Upper East Side apartment. It was 1:17 a.m., and sleep wasn't coming. Again, these days, it rarely did. He sat in his leather armchair, a glass of scotch untouched on the side table, staring at old photos on his phone. "You really screwed it up this time, didn't you?" he muttered to himself, zooming in on a picture from better days. His daughter's high school graduation, back when he was still somebody. Back before everything fell apart. His phone buzzed, making him jump. A text from his daughter Sarah. "Dad, you up? Can't sleep again." He smiled. She knew him too well. "Yeah, princess, the usual. You should be sleeping though," says the man who's probably brooding in his chair right now. Cohen chuckled, then typed, "I'm not brooding. I'm contemplating." "Same thing, Dad. Try counting sheep or something. Love you too, kiddo." He put the phone down and finally reached for the scotch. The ice had melted, diluting the expensive liquor. Just as well, he'd been drinking too much. Lately anyway. The silence of his apartment felt oppressive, broken only by the steady drumming of rain and the occasional horn from the streets below. His mind wandered to the morning's newspaper headline. Former FBI archivist found dead in apparent suicide. Thomas Wilson. Tom. They'd known each other for years, not close friends, but the kind of acquaintance you could trust in a world where trust was a rare commodity. The phone buzzed again. Unknown number. Cohen almost ignored it, but something made him pick up. "Hello." Silence. "Hello, who is this?" More silence. Then a click. Call ended. "Great," he muttered. "Just what I needed. Paranoid fuel for my insomnia." He was about to put the phone down when an email notification popped up. The sender, Twilson at encrypted net. Cohen sat up straight, suddenly very awake. Tom Wilson. But he was. The subject line read, "If you're reading this, I'm already dead." "Jesus Christ, Tom." Cohen whispered, his finger hovering over the email. He glanced at the time, 3:47 a.m. The rain seemed to pound harder against the windows as he opened. The message, "Mike, if you're reading this, then they finally got to me. I know how it'll look. Suicide. Probably pills or a gun. Clean, simple, believable. After all, who'd question another burned-out federal employee taking the easy way out? But you know better. You've seen how the game is played. Remember that conversation we had at O'Malley's last year about the files that didn't exist. They exist, Mike. Room 7B. The code is 1994. What I found. It's worse than anything we imagined. They killed Karen and the kids. Made it look like a gas leak while I was at work. It wasn't random. Nothing is. 40.8518 N. 77.07 to 9. Why, we're always smarter than me, Mike. You got out when you could. But some things you can't walk away from. Be careful. Tom Cohen read the email 3 times, his hands trembling slightly. He remembered that night at O'Malley's. Tom had been drunk, rambling about patterns he'd noticed in the archives, about files that disappeared and reappeared with subtle changes. Cohen had written it off as conspiracy theories from a man who'd spent too long in the basement with old documents. But Karen and the kids. He'd seen the news about the accident 2 weeks ago. Tragic, but not suspicious. Just like Tom's suicide wouldn't seem suspicious to most people. He got up and started pacing, his mind racing. The coordinates pointed to a small town in Pennsylvania, just outside State College. He knew there was an FBI records facility there. Not one of the main ones, but an auxiliary storage site. The kind of place where papers got lost in the shuffle. His phone buzzed again. Another unknown number. This time, a text. Delete the email. Now. Cohen felt his heart rate spike. He walked to the window, pulling back the curtain slightly. Across the street, a black SUV sat idle in the rain, its headlights off. "Shit," he muttered, letting the curtain fall back. His laptop was still on his desk. He opened it, hands moving quickly now. Years of working as a fixer had taught him a few things about covering tracks. He saved the email contents to an encrypted drive, then permanently deleted the original. The phone buzzed again. Smart move. "Sleep well, Mr. Cohen. The SUV's headlights came on, and it pulled away from the curb, disappearing into the rainy night. Cohen sat back in his chair, his mind racing. He should let it go. He had enough problems already. The disbarment, the public humiliation, the endless depositions. He'd finally started rebuilding some semblance of a life. His phone lit up with another text from Sarah. "Dad, seriously, go to sleep." He stared at her message, thinking about Karen Wilson and her kids, about Tom, about all the things he'd done and seen during his years as a lawyer that never quite added up. Got a lot of work tomorrow. Princess, sweet dreams. He walked to his closet and pulled out an old briefcase, the one he hadn't touched since his last day as a lawyer. Inside was his old security credential. It had expired, but the magnetic strip still held data. Data that, combined with the right access codes, might still work. "You're too old for this shit," he told himself. But he was already planning. He'd need a burner phone, cash, a rental car under a different name. The kind of things he used to arrange for other people. He opened his laptop again and booked a flight to Pittsburgh for the next morning. As he packed a small bag, his hands steady now, he thought about something his father used to say: "The truth doesn't cost anything, but lies cost everything." The old man had been wrong about that. The truth had a price too. Tom Wilson had paid it. So had his family. The question was, how much was Cohen willing to pay? He spent the next few hours setting things in motion. A series of calls from a payphone down the street, a visit to an ATM, messages to old contacts who owed him favors. The kind of people who knew how to get things without asking questions. By 6 a.m., he had everything he needed except certainty. The rain had finally stopped, and the first gray light of dawn was creeping over the city. He took a quick shower, dressed in nondescript clothing, and called a taxi. As he waited in the lobby of his building, his phone buzzed one last time. "Sarah again. Morning, Dad. Coming over for dinner tonight? Making your favorite pasta." His throat tightened. He typed carefully. "Might have to take a rain check, sweetheart. Got a last-minute work thing. Everything okay?" Cohen stared at her. Message for a long moment. Outside, the taxi pulled up. "Everything's fine. Just some old business I need to handle. Love you. Love you to Dad. Be careful with the old business stuff, okay?" If she only knew. He turned off his regular phone, slipped the burner into his pocket, and stepped out into the morning air. The streets were starting to fill with early commuters, everyone focused on their own little worlds, their own problems. "Where to?" the driver asked, catching his eye in the rearview mirror. Cohen took one last look at his building. He thought about Tom Wilson, about room 7B, about all the questions he'd never asked during his years as a fixer, because he knew the answers would be too ugly. Reagan National, he said, settling into the back seat. "And take the long way. I'm in no hurry." As the taxi pulled away, he noticed another black SUV parked half a block down. Maybe it was nothing. Maybe it was everything. Either way, there was no turning back now. The driver nodded, merging into traffic. "Gonna be a beautiful day," he said, making small talk. Rain's finally cleared up. Cohen wasn't listening. His mind was already in Pennsylvania, in room 7B, wondering what kind of truth could be worth killing a whole family for. His burner phone vibrated. Unknown number. One word, "don't." He deleted the message and looked out the window, watching the city wake up, somewhere in an FBI facility, in a room that officially didn't exist. There were answers, whether he wanted them or not. He was going to find them. The taxi turned onto the FDR Drive, heading south. Behind them, a black SUV merged into traffic, 3 cars back. Cohen pretended not to notice. The game was already starting, and he hadn't even made his first move yet. "Beautiful day indeed," he muttered, as the rising sun painted the East River in shades of gold and blood red. The taxi ride felt like it lasted forever. Every red light, every slow car in front made Cohen's nerves tingle. The black SUV kept its distance, 3 cars back, sometimes 4. Professional enough to make him wonder if he was just being paranoid. "Mind if I turn on the radio?" the driver asked, already reaching for the dial. "Go ahead." The morning news filled the cab. And in other news, the shocking death of former FBI archivist Thomas Wilson continues to raise questions. Sources close to the investigation suggest. "Different station, please," Cohen said sharply. The driver glanced at him in the rearview mirror, but complied, switching to some generic pop music. Cohen pulled out his burner phone and typed in the coordinates from Tom's email again. The facility wasn't marked on any public maps, but he knew it was there, hidden in plain sight. Like all the best secrets, his mind wandered to the last time he'd seen Tom alive. "Just 3 weeks ago, you look like shit, Tom," Cohen had said, sliding onto the bar stool at O'Malley's. Tom's laugh was hollow. "Yeah, well, spending 20 years in a basement reading other people's secrets does that to you." He was already 3 drinks in, judging by the glasses. Maybe it's time for a career change. Too late for that. Tom's hands were shaking slightly as he lifted his glass. Way too late. She's scared. Tom's voice dropped to almost a whisper. "And she should be. We all should be." "What are you talking about?" Tom had just shaken his head, ordering another drink. "You ever wonder why some cases just disappear? Why certain names never show up in the final reports? 20 years, Mike. 20 years of watching papers get filed in the wrong places, watching evidence vanish into thin air. You're drunk, Tom. Room 7B. He'd muttered, "It's all in room 7B. But you can't just walk in there. They watch. They always watch." Cohen had written it off as the ramblings of a burned-out bureaucrat. Now, sitting in the taxi, those words took on a different weight. "Sir," the driver's voice snapped him back to the present. "We're getting close to the airport. Which terminal?" Cohen checked his flight details. Terminal B. As they approached the airport, the black SUV finally peeled off, taking an exit ramp. Maybe they were just heading the same way after all. Maybe. The driver pulled up to the departure area. "Here you are, sir. Need help with your bag?" "I'm good." Cohen paid in cash, adding a generous tip. "Have a good one." Inside the terminal, he moved with purpose but not hurry. Security theater was all about looking like you belonged. He'd learned that years ago, back when he was fixing other people's problems instead of walking into his own. His flight wasn't for another 2 hours. He found a quiet corner in a coffee shop and opened his laptop, connecting through a VPN. Time to do some homework. The facility near State College was officially listed as a records retention center. Public documents showed it was built in 1992, expanded in 1994. There was that number again, and underwent modernization in 2008. What the documents didn't show was the sub-basement added during that modernization, or the fact that the facility's power consumption was 3 times what it should be for a simple records warehouse. He'd learned to spot these patterns during his years as a fixer. The devil was always in the details, in the things that didn't quite add up. His burner phone vibrated again. This time, a picture message, Sarah leaving her apartment building, heading to work. The message below it read, "Beautiful daughter. Be a shame if something happened to her." Cohen's hand tightened around the phone. The game had changed. Now it wasn't just about him, about Tom's secret, about whatever was hidden in room 7B. They'd brought Sarah into it. He should walk away, get on a different flight, go home, hug his daughter, and forget about Tom Wilson and his conspiracies. That would be the smart play. But they'd killed Karen Wilson and her kids, made it look like an accident. How many others had there been? How many more would there be? He opened his laptop again and booked a second flight, this one to Miami using his regular credit card. Let them chase that trail for a while. Then he called Sarah. "Dad, shouldn't you be working? Just wanted to hear your voice. Princess, listen, I need you to do something for me, okay?" She sounded worried. She knew him too well. Remember Uncle Joey in Chicago? A pause. "Mom's brother, the cop. Yeah, I need you to go stay with him for a few days. Don't tell anyone where you're going. Not even Mom. Dad, you're scaring me. It's just a precaution. Some old business came up. Might have some ripples. Joey will keep you safe." "What kind of business? Is this about your old job?" "About him." Cohen closed his eyes. "No, Princess, this is something else. Something important. Just trust me, okay? Another pause. You're going to do something stupid, aren't you? Me, never. He tried to make his voice light. Just being careful. Call Joey as soon as we hang up. He's expecting you. He'd already called his former brother-in-law. From the payphone earlier, Joey hadn't asked many questions. He understood about keeping family safe, Dad. I love you, Sarah. See you soon. He ended the call before she could argue. His burner phone buzzed again. Sweet conversation. But Uncle Joey can't protect her forever. Cohen deleted the message and looked at his watch. 90 minutes until his flight. He pulled out Tom's email again, reading it one more time. Something about the wording bothered him. Some pattern he couldn't quite see yet. The airport buzzed with activity around him. Thousands of people rushing to thousands of destinations, each with their own stories, their own secrets. Somewhere, in Pennsylvania, in a room that didn't officially exist, there was a truth worth killing for. And somewhere in Manhattan, men in a black SUV were probably already planning their next move. Cohen finished his coffee and headed toward his gate. The game was just beginning, and he was already playing catch-up. But that's how it always started. One small step into the darkness, hoping you'd find the light switch before something found you. As he walked, he thought about Sarah, about Karen Wilson and her kids, about Tom's last email, some things you can't walk away from. Tom had been right about that, at least. The PA system crackled, now boarding Flight 1990 to Pittsburgh. Cohen smiled grimly at the coincidence. Sometimes the universe had a sick sense of humor. The rental car's heater struggled against the Pennsylvania cold. Cohen had picked the most nondescript vehicle on the lot, a gray Toyota Camry, the kind of car that disappeared in any parking lot. The GPS showed he was 20 minutes from the coordinates, winding through back roads where bare trees clawed. At a steel gray sky, his burner phone rang. Unknown number, as usual. You really want to do this? Mike. The voice was distorted, electronic. Who is this? A friend. Turn around. Go home. Some doors shouldn't be opened. Cohen pulled over, killing the engine. My friends usually introduce themselves. Your friends usually end up dead. Like Tom Wilson. What do you know about Tom? The line went dead. Cohen sat there listening to the tick of the cooling engine. His old security badge felt heavy in his pocket. He'd modified the magnetic strip using equipment from one of his less reputable contacts. But would it work? And if it did, then what? His regular phone had 3 missed calls from Sarah. He'd told her not to contact this number, but she was worried. He listened to her voicemail. Dad, I'm at Uncle Joey's. Whatever you're doing, please be careful. I haven't seen you this way since. Well, you know when. Call me, okay? I love you. Since the Trump days, she meant. Since everything fell apart. He started the car again, pulling back onto the road. The facility came into view. Gradually, a sprawling one-story building surrounded by a chain-link fence. The sign read Federal Records Management Center. Simple, boring, perfect. The parking lot held about 20 cars. Cohen parked far from the entrance, next to a beaten-up Ford pickup. He sat watching the building for 15 minutes. To people. Left, 3 arrived. Regular shift change. His burner phone buzzed. Last chance. He deleted the message and got out of the car, briefcase in hand. The walk to the entrance felt endless. Every step screamed that he should turn around. The security desk was staffed by a bored-looking guard reading something on his phone. The nameplate read Curtis, *morning. Cohen said, sliding his badge across the desk. Mike Cohen. Here from the D.C. office. Records audit. Curtis barely glanced at the badge before swiping it. Cohen held his breath. The light turned green. Sign. Here, Curtis said, pushing a logbook forward. You know where you're going. Records Section B. Right. They said someone would meet me. Curtis shrugged. Haven't heard anything about that. But B section's down the main hall. Take a left at the water fountain. Can't miss it. Thanks. Cohen signed the log with a deliberately messy scrawl. The hallway was exactly what you'd expect. Fluorescent lights, beige walls, motivational posters that had yellowed with age. His footsteps echoed on the linoleum floor. He passed several people, nodding politely. No one gave him a second look. Just another suit in a building full of them. The water fountain marked the intersection of two hallways. Left led to Section B, according to the signs. But Tom's email had mentioned Room 7B. Cohen had studied the building plans. There was no Room 7B on any official layout. He turned left anyway, walking slowly, studying the room numbers. 1B to B, 3B, they ended at 6B. The hallway terminated in a janitor's closet. Cohen checked his watch, 10:45 a.m. He'd been inside for 7 minutes. A woman in a pantsuit approached from the other direction. "Can I help you find something? Just getting my bearings." He smiled. "First time here. Records audit from D.C. She nodded, already losing interest. "Let me know if you need anything." "I'm Linda from Records Management. Asterisk will do, thanks." He waited until she disappeared around the corner, then examined the janitor's closet door. The lock was basic, a simple pin tumbler that took him less than 30 seconds to pick. Another skill from his fixer days. The closet was small, cramped with cleaning supplies. It smelled of bleach and old mops. Cohen closed the door behind him, clicking on his phone's flashlight. The back wall looked solid, but something about the shelving unit caught his eye. It was bolted to the wall, unusual for a janitor's closet. He ran his fingers along the edge, feeling for anything unusual. There, a slight ridge behind the middle shelf. He pressed. Nothing happened. "Come on, Tom," he muttered. "Give me something." He tried pulling instead of pushing. The entire shelving unit swung out silently on hidden hinges, revealing a keypad and card reader. Cohen's hands were steady as he swiped his modified badge. The keypad lit up green. 1994. The wall beside the shelving unit slid open with a soft hiss, revealing a stairwell leading down. "Jesus, Tom, what did you find down here?" His phone buzzed. "The point of no return, Mr. Cohen. Sure you want to cross it?" He deleted the message and started down the stairs, letting the door slide shut behind him. The stairwell was lit by dim emergency lighting. His footsteps echoed despite his attempt to move quietly. At the bottom, another keypad, same code. The door opened into a long corridor lined with doors. Each had a numerical keypad and a heavy deadbolt. But one door was different, heavier, with a biometric scanner instead of a keypad. Room 7B. Cohen approached it slowly, examining the scanner. It was new technology, probably installed during the 2008 modernization, but someone had accessed this room recently. There were scuff marks on the floor, fresh ones. He pulled out his phone and a small device he'd picked up that morning, a biometric spoofer, another gift from his less reputable contacts. It was designed to replay the last successful scan. "Please work," he whispered, attaching the device to the scanner. The lock clicked open. The room beyond was smaller than he expected, maybe 20 feet square. The walls were lined with filing cabinets, and a single desk sat in the center, empty except for a computer terminal. Cohen closed the door behind him and approached the desk. The computer was on, the screen showing a simple login prompt. He plugged a USB drive into the port, another tool from his morning shopping trip. The screen flickered as the program did its work, bypassing the login. Files filled the screen, hundreds of them, organized by year. The oldest dated back to 1994. "What the hell were you into, Tom?" He started with the most recent files, working backward. Each folder contained surveillance reports, financial records, death certificates. His blood ran cold as patterns emerged. Accidents that weren't accidents, suicides that made no sense, money moving through shadow accounts. A folder from 2019 caught his eye. Operation Clean Sweep. He opened it. 2 minutes later, he was vomiting into the trash can beside the desk. The files detailed in systematic elimination. Program. Journalists, judges, witnesses, anyone who got too close to certain investigations. But it wasn't just targets. There were casualty lists, collateral damage, children. Karen Wilson and her kids were in there. So was Tom. Their deaths had been planned months in advance. Cohen's hands shook as he copied files to his drive. Names jumped out at him. People he knew, people he'd worked with. Some were marked as targets, others as facilitators. His own name appeared several times in the Early files. Asset. Potential liability. The door beeped. Cohen froze. Someone was coming. He yanked the drive out, scrambling to close files. The door beeped again. Someone entering the security code. There was nowhere to hide. The room was too small. Too open. The handle turned. The door opened slowly, and Cohen's heart nearly stopped. A janitor stepped in, wearing headphones, pushing a cleaning cart. He froze when he saw Cohen. "Oh, sorry, sir. Didn't know anyone was." The janitor pulled his headphones off, eyes darting to Cohen's badge, then to the computer. "I usually clean this room at 11. Nobody's ever here." Cohen forced a casual smile. "No problem. Records audit from DC. Almost done here." The janitor nodded, but something was off about his reaction. His eyes kept moving between Cohen and the door. "I'll come back later then," the janitor said, reaching for his cart. That's when Cohen noticed. The cart was empty. No cleaning supplies. No trash bags. The janitor's hand moved toward his jacket. Cohen reacted on instinct, lunging forward as the janitor reached for what was definitely not a cleaning tool. They crashed into the cart, sending it clattering across the room. The man was stronger than he looked, and trained. His elbow caught Cohen's ribs with practiced precision. "You shouldn't have come here, Cohen," the man grunted, reaching again for his jacket. They grappled against the filing cabinets, papers scattering around them. Cohen managed to get his arm around the man's throat, using a chokehold he'd learned years ago and hoped he'd never need again. "Who sent you?" Cohen demanded, tightening his grip. The man responded by slamming his head back, catching Cohen's nose. Stars exploded in his vision, but he held on. They crashed into the desk, the computer monitor teetering dangerously. "Last chance," the man gasped. "Walk away. Forget what you saw." Like Tom Wilson did. The man went limp suddenly, a faint. As Cohen's grip loosened slightly, the janitor twisted, breaking free. His hand finally reached his jacket, pulling out a syringe. "Nothing personal," he said, lunging forward. "Just cleaning up loose ends." Cohen grabbed the computer monitor and swung it like a club. It caught the man in the side of the head. With a sickening crack, he went down hard, the syringe skittering across the floor. Cohen stood there, breathing heavily, blood dripping from his nose. The man was unconscious but alive. The syringe contained a clear liquid, probably something that would have looked like natural causes in an autopsy. His phone buzzed. "Sloppy work. You're better than that. Show yourself." Cohen shouted at the empty room. "Who are you?" Another buzz. "Check his left pocket." Cohen hesitated, then knelt beside the unconscious man. In his left pocket was an ID card, FBI Special Operations Division. The name was obviously fake, but the authorization codes were real. "Jesus," Cohen muttered. This wasn't some rogue operation. This was official. His phone buzzed again. 2 minutes until his backup arrives. Tick-tock. Cohen grabbed his USB drive and briefcase. He couldn't go back the way he came. The stairs would be a death trap. But these old buildings always had maintenance tunnels, emergency exits. He ran his hands along the walls, looking for any sign of another way out. There behind a filing cabinet, a maintenance hatch, probably leading to utility tunnels. It took precious seconds to move the cabinet. The hatch was heavy, rusted at the edges. It creaked loudly as he pulled it open, revealing a dark tunnel beyond. His phone buzzed one last time. Left, right, left, straight 100 yards, up the ladder. Run. Cohen climbed through the hatch, pulling it shut behind him. The tunnel was barely lit by emergency lights, the air thick with dust. He ran, counting turns. Left, footsteps echoed behind him. Someone had found the unconscious agent. Right. Voices shouted in the distance, orders being given. Left. His lungs burned. The USB drive felt like it weighed 100 pounds in his pocket. Straight ahead, the tunnel stretched into darkness. He counted steps, using the lights as markers. 90 yards, 95. There a maintenance ladder leading up to another hatch. Cohen climbed as quietly as he could, his arms shaking from adrenaline. The hatch above was similar to the one he'd entered through. He pressed his ear against it. Nothing. Slowly, carefully, he pushed it open a crack. He was looking at the underside of a dumpster. Perfect. The hatch opened just enough for him to squeeze through. He found himself behind the records facility, near the loading docks. His rental car was on the other side of the building. Stop right. There, a security guard stood 20 yards away, hand on his holster. ID check, the guard said. Approaching cautiously, Cohen raised his hands slowly. His badge clearly visible. Records audit from DC. Just checking the external access points. The guard relaxed slightly, but kept his hand near his weapon. Didn't know we had an audit today. Last minute thing. You know how it is with the bureaucrats upstairs. Need to see your authorization papers. Cohen reached slowly into his jacket, as if going for documents. Instead, he threw his briefcase at the guard's face. The guard ducked. Predictable response. Cohen used that moment to close the distance between them. To quick strikes, solar plexus, then throat. Not enough to cause permanent damage, but enough to put the guard down for a few minutes. Sorry, Cohen muttered, taking the guard's radio and cell phone. Just doing my job too. He ran along the building's perimeter, staying close to the walls. No alarms yet. They were trying to keep this quiet. Smart. His rental car came into view. 2 men in suits were standing beside it. Damn it. He changed direction, heading for the employee parking lot, the pickup truck he'd parked next to earlier. Its driver had left the windows down despite the cold. Amateur it took him 30 seconds to hotwire the truck. As he pulled out of the parking lot, he saw men running from the building's entrance, but they were too late. The facility disappeared in his rearview mirror as he turned onto the main road. His hands were shaking now that the adrenaline was wearing off. His phone, his regular one, rang. Sarah, Dad, are you okay? Uncle Joey's been trying to call you. I'm fine, Princess. Everything's fine. Stay with Joey for a few more days. Okay, Dad, what's going on? There were men at my apartment earlier, asking questions. Cohen's grip tightened on the steering wheel. What kind of questions? About you. About your old work. They said they were FBI, but something felt wrong. Listen to me carefully, Sarah. Don't talk to anyone else about me. Not even Mom. Stay with Joey. I'll contact you when it's safe. Safe. Dad, you're scaring me. I love you, Princess. Trust me. Okay. He ended the call and tossed both phones out the window. They'd be tracking them by now. The USB drive felt heavy in his pocket. He hadn't had time to read most of the files, but what he'd seen. Operation Clean Sweep was just the tip of the iceberg. 3 decades of systematic elimination of threats, all authorized at the highest levels. The pickup truck's radio crackled. He'd forgotten about the guard's radio. All units, be advised. Subject is heading east on Route 26 in a stolen blue Ford pickup. Consider armed and dangerous. Proceed with extreme caution. Cohen checked the gas gauge. Half tank. Enough to get him to Ohio if he was lucky. He needed to ditch the truck soon. Find another way to travel. His mind raced through options. He had contacts in Cleveland, people who owed him favors from his fixer days. But first, he needed to make sure the USB drive's contents reached the right people. The radio crackled again. Be advised. Roadblocks are being established on all major routes. FBI has jurisdiction. Do not engage without federal presence. Cohen smiled grimly. They were scared. The files he'd stolen. They were willing to throw away any pretense of subtlety to get them back. What exactly had he stumbled into? He turned off the main road onto a series of back-country lanes. They'd expect him to head for a major city. Time to get unpredictable. As he drove, his mind kept going back to the files he'd seen. Names, dates, operations spanning 3 decades. Judges who'd died in accidents right before major cases. Journalists who'd committed suicide while investigating certain stories. And Tom, poor paranoid Tom, who'd finally discovered too much. The pickup truck rumbled down the rural roads as the sun began to set. Somewhere behind him, a massive manhunt was being organized. Somewhere ahead, answers waited in the files on his USB drive. And somewhere in Chicago, his daughter was probably staring at her phone, wondering if her father had finally lost his mind. Maybe he had, but he'd seen enough to know he couldn't walk away. Not anymore. Not after what he'd found in room 7B. The question was, Where could he go that was safe enough to examine the files properly? And more importantly, who could he trust with what he'd found? The radio crackled one final time. All units be advised. Subject is considered a national security threat. Shoot-to-kill authorization has been granted. Cohen switched off the radio. The game had changed. Now it wasn't about exposing the truth. It was about staying alive long enough to figure out what the truth meant. He checked his rearview mirror. The road behind him was empty. But that wouldn't last long. Night was falling, and with it would come the real hunters. The next few hours would determine everything. He just hoped he'd live long enough to see what was in those files, because something told him that room 7B was just the beginning. The motel room was exactly what you'd expect for $40 a night. Stained carpet, flickering fluorescent lights, and a bed that had seen better decades. Cohen sat at the small desk, his laptop connected to a portable hotspot he'd bought with cash at a truck stop. 3 days had passed since room 7B. 3 days of staying off main roads, switching vehicles, and sleeping in shifts. Now in this nameless motel just outside Toledo, it was time to see what he'd really stolen. The USB drive hummed as it connected. Files populated the screen, thousands of them, organized by year and operation code names. "Okay, Tom," he muttered. "Show me what got you killed." His burner phone, a new one, buzzed. "Start with Operation Silverfish." Cohen was getting used to these anonymous messages. He found the folder, op_silverfish_1994 to 1997. The first document made him sit back in his chair. Christ almighty, it was a financial ledger, but the numbers didn't add up to anything legitimate. Offshore accounts, shell companies, all leading back to names he recognized: federal judges, agency directors, even a Supreme Court justice. His phone buzzed again. "Keep going. Page 47. Page 47 was a death certificate. Judge Michael Hawthorne. Heart attack, 1995. Except according to the operational notes, Hawthorne had been asking questions about certain financial transfers. His heart attack had been administered via an untraceable toxin. A knock at the door made him freeze. "Housekeeping." Cohen closed the laptop slowly. "Not now, thanks." "Sorry, sir. Manager says all rooms need inspection today." Something in the voice was off. Cohen had spent years reading people, learning their tells. This wasn't housekeeping. He quickly pocketed the USB drive and moved to the bathroom window. It was small, but he could fit through if he had to. Another knock, harder this time. "Sir, please open the door." Cohen heard multiple footsteps in the hallway. At least 3 people. His phone buzzed. Back window. Blue sedan. Keys under mat. He didn't hesitate. The bathroom window opened with a protesting squeal. Behind him, he heard the door being breached. "Federal agents, don't move." Cohen was already halfway through the window. He dropped to the ground. As bullets splintered the frame above him, the blue sedan was there, exactly as promised. An old Crown Victoria, the kind cops used to drive. The keys were under the mat. Shouts came from his room as he started the car. In his rearview mirror, he saw men in tactical gear pouring out of the motel. His phone buzzed as he pulled onto the highway. "You're welcome. Now let's talk about what you found." Cohen checked for tails as he merged into traffic. "How about you tell me who you are first?" The reply came quickly. "Someone who wants the same thing you do. Truth. Truth got Tom Wilson killed. Truth gets everyone killed eventually. Your daughter's still safe, by the way, but they're watching." Joey's house. Cohen's grip tightened on the steering wheel. "Leave Sarah out of this. They won't. Not after what you stole. Pull over at the next rest stop. We need to talk." "Right, walk into another trap. If we wanted you dead, you would be. Rest stop. 10 minutes. Cohen weighed his options. His mysterious texture had helped him escape twice now. But trust was a luxury he couldn't afford. He pulled into the rest stop anyway. It was nearly empty. A few trucks in the back lot. A family minivan by the vending machines. His phone buzzed. Silver Audi. Parking spot 7. The Audi was there, engine running. A woman sat in the driver's seat, middle-aged, wearing a pantsuit that screamed federal employee. Cohen parked next to her, keeping his engine running too. She rolled down her window. Get in. And yes, if this was a trap, you'd already be dead. Lady, I don't even know your name. Margaret Hayes, former DOJ Internal Affairs. Currently unemployed due to asking the wrong questions about Operation Clean Sweep. Cohen studied her face. Prove it. She handed him an ID card, legitimate DOJ credentials. I worked with Tom Wilson for years. He trusted me with what he found. Now I'm trusting you. Why? Because you have the files but don't know what you're looking at. I know what we're looking at, but don't have the files. She smiled thinly. Get in. We have a lot to discuss before they figure out where you are. Cohen got in her car. Talk. Fast. Operation Silverfish was the beginning, Margaret said, pulling out of the rest stop. A simple scheme. Judges and officials being bribed to look the other way on certain cases. But it grew. By 2000, they weren't just bribing people. They were eliminating threats. They. Who's they? That's the beautiful part. It's not just one agency or group. It's a network. FBI, CIA, DOJ, even private contractors, all working together to protect their interests. Cohen pulled out his laptop. Show me. For the next hour, as Margaret drove south on back roads, they went through the files. The pattern was clear and terrifying. Look at this one, Margaret. Pointed. Senator James Mitchell. Car accident in 2016. He was about to expose a black budget program worth billions. And this, Cohen added. Opening another file. District Attorney Sarah Chen. Suicide in 2019. She was investigating campaign finances. That wasn't suicide, Margaret cut in. That was Operation Clean Sweep, Phase 1. Phase 1? They're planning something bigger, much bigger. That's what Tom found. Look at the resource allocations for the next 6 months. Cohen found the spreadsheet. The numbers were astronomical. This is a purge. Margaret finished. Anyone who might be a threat. Journalists, prosecutors, even low-level. Whistleblowers. All marked for retirement. Jesus. Cohen ran his hands through his hair. How many people? Over 300 targets. Plus collateral. She glanced at him. Your daughter's on the list. So is your ex-wife. Cohen felt his blood run cold. When? Soon. The operation's already in motion. Why do you think they're so desperate to get those files back? His phone buzzed again. Show her Operation Phoenix. Margaret's eyes widened. You have Phoenix files. Cohen found the folder. Inside was a single document, a list of names, but not targets. These are Supreme Court justices, he said. Cabinet members, agency directors, asterisk the real. Puppet masters, Margaret nodded. The ones giving the orders. Notice anything interesting about the dates? Cohen looked closer. Next to each name was a number, account balances. All had received massive transfers on the same day, November 22, 1994. The day Kennedy was shot, Margaret said quietly. They have a sick sense of humor. This goes all the way to the top, higher. Look at the source of the transfers. The money had come through a maze of shell companies, but they all traced back to one name, Sentinel Global Holdings. Never heard of them, Cohen said. Nobody has. They don't exist, except as a conduit for black money. Billions of dollars flowing to some of the most powerful people in the country. In exchange for what? Margaret pulled into an abandoned gas station. Protection. These people, the ones on your list, they make problems disappear. They bury evidence. They eliminate threats. And when someone gets too close, they end up like Tom Wilson. Exactly. She turned off the engine. We need to release these files. All of them. They'll kill us. They'll kill us anyway. But if these files go public, she pulled out a thumb drive. I have something to add to your collection. Internal DOJ communications about Operation Clean Sweep. Dates, times, authorization codes. Cohen connected her drive to his laptop. How did you get these? I was investigating corruption cases when I noticed the pattern. Too many dead witnesses. Too many convenient accidents. I started keeping copies of everything. And they found out they killed my partner. Made it look like a robbery gone wrong. I've been underground ever since, trying to find someone with the courage to help me expose this. Cohen's phone buzzed. Company coming. 3 vehicles, heavily armed. They heard engines in the distance. How do they keep finding us? Cohen grabbed his laptop. They're tracking every camera, every license plate reader. Margaret started the car. We need to split up. You take the Crown Vic. I'll draw them off. They'll kill you. She smiled sadly. Probably. But I'm tired of running. Those files are more important than either of us. Headlights appeared on the road. Go, she said. Get the files to someone who can do something with them. I have a contact at Reuters. Amanda Chen, Sarah Chen's sister. She's been investigating her sister's death for years. She has the resources to protect herself and make this public. Cohen hesitated. Come with me, no time. Go. And Cohen. She handed him a key. Storage unit in Cincinnati. More evidence. Everything I collected over 3 years. The headlights were getting closer. Thank you, Cohen said, getting out of the car. Don't thank me. Just make sure they don't get away with it. He ran to the Crown Victoria as Margaret pulled out onto the road, heading straight for the approaching vehicles. Her tires squealed as she accelerated. Cohen started his car and went the opposite direction, taking a service road behind the gas station. In his rearview mirror, he saw the 3 black SUVs turn to follow Margaret. His phone buzzed one last time. Storage unit code is November 22nd, 63. Another sick joke. Hurry. He drove through the night, taking back roads, switching cars twice more. By dawn, he was in Cincinnati, looking for a storage facility that matched the key Margaret had given him. His new burner phone, his 4th in 3 days, rang. Dad, his heart stopped. Sarah, I told you not to. They took Uncle Joey. Cohen pulled over, his hands shaking. What? When? Last night. Men in suits. They said they just wanted to ask him some questions, but he hasn't come back. Dad, I'm scared. Where are you now hidden? Like you taught me, that summer house in Michigan, remember? He remembered. A property owned through shell companies. Untraceable. Stay there. I'm coming. No, you're not. Sarah's voice was firm. Uncle Joey told me what you're into. What Tom Wilson found. You have to finish this, Dad. Sarah, I'm safe here. But those files, people need to know the truth. About Aunt Sarah Chen. About all of them. Cohen closed his eyes. When had his daughter grown up so much? I love you. Princess, love you too, Dad. Be careful. He found the storage facility in our later. Unit 1122. The key fit perfectly. Inside was a treasure trove. Boxes of documents, hard drives, recordings. Margaret Hayes had been busy during her years underground. His phone buzzed. They found her. Highway 75. Made it look like an accident. Cohen's hands clenched into fists. Another name for the list. Another accident that wasn't an accident. He started going through the boxes. Margaret had organized everything meticulously. Dates, operations, names. Combined with the files from room 7B. This ends now, he muttered. He pulled out his laptop and started composing an email to Amanda Chen. The subject line was simple. Your sister didn't kill herself. As he worked, he thought about Tom Wilson, about Margaret Hayes, about Sarah Chen, about all the others who had died trying to expose the truth. His phone buzzed. They're mobilizing everyone. Operation Clean Sweep is being accelerated. You have 48 hours. Cohen kept typing. The truth had already cost too many lives. Now it was time to make those lives count for something. The game wasn't over. It was just moving into its final phase. The storage unit felt smaller by the hour as Cohen dug deeper into Margaret's files. Each box revealed new horrors, new connections. She had mapped out the entire network on a series of boards hidden behind some old furniture. Strings connecting photos, documents, death certificates. His phone buzzed. Check the red notebook marked Phoenix Override. He found it buried under tax records. Inside was a handwritten note from Margaret. If you're reading this, I'm probably dead. The override codes on page 7 will shut down their secure communications. What I'm use only. Choose your moment carefully. His new burner phone rang. A number he didn't recognize. Mr. Cohen. The voice was cultured, elderly. You've caused quite a stir. Who is this? Someone who can make all this go away. Your daughter can come home. Your brother-in-law will be released. All we need are the files. Cohen laughed bitterly. Just like Tom Wilson's problems went away, Mr. Wilson made unfortunate choices. You still have options. Like what happened to Margaret Hayes. Another unfortunate accident, a pause. Ms. Hayes' death was regrettable. Sometimes operations have unforeseen complications. Operations like Clean Sweep, like Phoenix. The voice sharpened. You don't understand what you're involved in. This is bigger than you can imagine. Try me. Very well. The man sighed. What do you think happens if those files go public? The entire system collapses. Financial markets crash. Governments fall. Chaos. Maybe that's what needs to happen. $10 million, the voice said flatly. In any account you choose. Walk away. Live a comfortable life with your daughter. Cohen thought about Sarah Chen's autopsy photos, about Karen Wilson and her kids, about Margaret Hayes. You know what's interesting? He said. I've been going through these files for hours. Want to know what I found? Mr. Cohen, a pattern. Every time you eliminate someone, you make the same mistakes, the same signatures. Like how Judge Harrison's heart attack had the exact same toxicology report as 3 other judges. Or how Senator Mitchell's car accident used the same type of brake line cut as 5 other accidents. Silence on the other end. You got sloppy. Cohen continued. Comfortable. You thought nobody would ever connect the dots. Last chance. Mr. Cohen, the money, or what? You'll kill me. Add me to your statistics. Here's the thing. I already sent copies of everything to 6 different people. Dead man's switch. Anything happens to me, my daughter, or anyone else I care about, it all goes public. You're bluffing. Try me. Oh, and say hi to the Supreme Court Justice who just walked into your office. The one who received $20 million on November 22, 1994. The line went dead. His phone buzzed with a new message. Well played. But they're coming anyway. Full tactical team. 15 minutes. Out. Cohen looked at the override codes in Margaret's notebook. What I'm use only. He started typing on his laptop, accessing the secure server Margaret had documented. The override codes would shut down their entire communication network for 30 minutes. 30 minutes during which they'd be operating. Blind. His regular phone rang. Sarah. Dad, there are men watching the house. I know, Princess. Listen carefully. In exactly 7 minutes, get in your car and drive north. Don't stop for anything. What are you going to do? Something really stupid. He smiled, just like old times. He could hear her smile too. Be careful, Dad. Always am, Princess. I love you. Love you too. He hung up and checked his watch. The tactical team would be here in 10 minutes. He needed to time this perfectly. His burner phone buzzed. Whatever you're planning, do it fast. Cohen entered the first override code. A progress bar appeared on his screen. Footsteps outside the storage unit. They were early. The second code went in. The progress bar jumped to 50%. Federal agents. Come out with your hands up. The third code. 75%. Asterisk something heavy hit the storage unit door. Final code. 100%. Breach in 3, 2. Cohen hit enter. The lights went out. All across the facility. Security systems went dark. In the distance, car alarms started blaring as the electromagnetic pulse from the override rippled outward. He'd read Margaret's notes carefully. The override didn't just shut down communications. It fried them. Permanently. The storage unit door exploded inward. Flashlights beamed cut through the darkness. But Cohen was already gone, through the hole he'd cut in the back wall. While studying Margaret's files, sometimes the old tricks were the best tricks. He ran through the maze of storage units as shouts and confusion erupted behind him. Without their radio communications, the tactical team was operating blind and uncoordinated. His phone buzzed one last time. Cars waiting at the south exit. Don't waste Margaret's sacrifice. He found the car. Another nondescript sedan with the keys in the ignition. As he pulled away, he could see the storage facility descending into chaos. The EMP had taken out everything electronic within a half-mile radius. They'd recover eventually, but not before he reached Amanda Chen. His laptop contained everything. The Room 7B files, Margaret's evidence, the network maps, the money trails. 30 years of corruption and murder, all leading to this moment. He drove through the night, watching his mirrors. There would be more attempts to stop him, more offers, more threats. But Tom Wilson had been right in his final email. Some things you can't walk away from, and some truths demanded to be told, no matter the cost. Asterisk, the Reuters building in Chicago loomed against the morning sky. Cohen sat in his car, watching reporters come and go, his laptop heavy with evidence in the seat beside him. He hadn't slept in 36 hours. His latest burner phone rang. "Sarah, I'm safe, Dad. Made it to the cabin. Any tales?" "No. Your trick with the back roads worked." Uncle Joey called too. "They released him." Cohen frowned. "Just like that?" He said they were confused, like their orders suddenly changed, or their communications went down. Cohen smiled. Margaret's override had worked better than expected. "Dad." Sarah hesitated. "Whatever you're about to do, be careful. Always am. Princess." "No, you're not. But I love you anyway." He ended the call and checked his mirrors again. The street looked normal. Morning traffic, people hurrying to work, food vendors setting up their carts. To normal. His phone buzzed. Back entrance. Loading dock. Chen's waiting. He grabbed his laptop and walked casually toward the building's rear. A woman stood by the loading dock, mid-30s, sharp eyes, professional dress. She looked exactly like her sister. "Mr. Cohen," she extended her hand. "Amanda Chen. Let's talk inside." The service elevator took them to a small conference room on the 10th floor. "No windows. Secure room," Amanda explained. "No electronics except what we bring in." "I've learned to be careful since Sarah." She didn't finish the sentence. "Didn't need to." Cohen opened his laptop. "Your sister didn't kill herself." "I know." Amanda's voice was tight. "But proving it was impossible. Until now. For the next hour." He walked her through everything. Room 7B, the financial trails. Operation Clean Sweep, Margaret's evidence, the network of corruption spanning 3 decades. Amanda took notes by hand, her face growing darker with each revelation. She shook her head. "This is bigger than anything we've ever." "I know." Asterisk, they'll try to stop the story. They already are. Cohen showed her his phone, messages from unknown numbers offering money, making threats. "We need to move fast then." Amanda stood. "I have a team I trust. We'll need maybe 48 hours to verify what we can. Prepare the story." "We don't have 48 hours. As if on cue, his phone buzzed. "Clean Sweep is moving. Target list activated. 12 hours. Amanda read the message. "What's Clean Sweep?" "The next phase. Mass eliminations disguised as accidents and suicides. Hundreds of targets, including your sister's old investigative team." "Jesus." She grabbed her office phone. "I need to warn them." "No." Cohen stopped her. "They're watching everything. One wrong call and..." "So what do we do?" Cohen pulled out Margaret's red notebook. "We have one chance, a way to shut down their secure communications permanently. But we need a bigger platform than Reuters." "What do you mean?" "How many major news outlets can you get on a secure conference call in the next hour?" Amanda smiled, the same determined smile he remembered. From Sarah. "All of them." The next 2 hours were a blur of activity. Amanda worked her contacts while Cohen prepared the files. Every major newspaper and network had someone listening. When they laid out the evidence, simultaneous release, Amanda told the group, "All outlets, all platforms, they can't stop everyone. They'll try to discredit it." Someone from the Washington Post said, "Let them." Cohen held up the financial records. "Money doesn't lie. And dead people tell very clear stories." His phone buzzed. "Nice plan. Won't work. Check the market." Cohen pulled up the financial news. The stock market was plunging. Someone was creating chaos to distract from what was coming. Another buzz. "Final offer. Walk away now." He showed Amanda the messages. "They're scared," she said. Asterisk, they should be. The conference room door opened. A security guard looked in. "Miss Chen?" "There are federal agents in the lobby. They have a warrant." Amanda checked her watch. "Right on schedule." "Mr. Cohen, I believe that's your cue to use the back stairs." "What about you?" "I'll stall them. Get those files out." "For Sarah." Cohen hesitated. They might. Asterisk my sister died for this story. I'm not afraid. She straightened her jacket. Go. We'll publish in 1 hour, no matter what. His phone buzzed. Again, tick-tock, Mr. Cohen. People are already dying. He took the back stairs down to the loading dock. Police sirens wailed in the distance. The phone rang. Unknown number. Hello, Mr. Cohen. It was the cultured voice from before. I see you've made your choice. You can't stop all of them. We don't have to. Watch your daughter's cabin. Cohen's blood ran cold. He pulled up the security feed he'd set up at the cabin. Sarah's car was gone. Nothing. Yet. Last chance. Kill the story. Go to hell. You first. The line went dead. His phone buzzed with a new message. She's safe. Rerouted her before they got there. But now you have a choice to make. Cohen got in his car, hands shaking. With rage. What choice? The override codes. Use them now. You might save the next wave of targets. Wait an hour. The story gets out. Can't do both. Why not? Override kills all electronic communications, including news networks, internet, everything. For at least 6 hours. Cohen swore. Use the codes now and save lives, but lose the chance to expose everything. Wait, and people die. But the truth gets out. His phone rang again. Amanda, they're coming up the stairs, she said calmly. But the files are already uploaded. One are Deadman's switch. Nothing can stop it now. Amanda, my sister would be proud of both of us. She paused. They're here. Good luck, Mr. Cohen. The line went dead. His phone buzzed. Clean sweep is starting. Targets across the country. Choose now. Cohen looked at Margaret's notebook, at the override codes, then at his laptop, with all the evidence ready to expose decades of corruption. The truth, or lives, always comes down to that choice. Asterisk he thought about Tom Wilson, about Margaret Hayes, about Sarah Chen, about all the others who had died trying to expose this. His fingers moved across the keyboard. Sometimes the hardest choices are the simplest ones. Cohen stared at his laptop, the override codes ready to be entered. His phone kept buzzing with reports of accidents starting to happen across the country. Dad? Sarah's voice came through his newest burner phone. I'm okay. They tried to reach the cabin. But your friend, the one sending messages, they got me out in time. Thank God. His voice cracked. Stay where you are. Well, what are you going to do? He looked at the time. 47 minutes. Until the story broke across every major news outlet. The right thing. He took a deep breath. I love you, Princess, Dad. Wait, he ended the call and started typing the override codes, not to shut everything down, but to target specific networks. Margaret's notes had shown him something he'd missed before, the ability to isolate the shutdown. His mysterious texture caught on immediately. Clever. Killing their comm networks, but leaving civilian channels open. The first reports of accidents were already hitting local news. A judge in Seattle, car crash, a prosecutor in Miami, home invasion, a journalist in Denver, apparent suicide. All targets from Operation Clean Sweep. Cohen hit enter. Asterisk across the country. Secure government and military communications went dark. The shadow network that had orchestrated 30 years of murder suddenly found itself blind and deaf. His phone rang. The cultured voice again. What did you do? Real panic now. Exactly what Tom Wilson would have done. What Margaret Hayes died trying to do. You don't understand. The system. The whole thing depends on control. Without it, you're just rich old men hiding. In offices. No more assassins. No more accidents. They'll never believe it. We'll deny everything. Cohen smiled. Check your financial accounts. A pause. Then, what did you? Margaret Hayes spent 3 years following your money. Every transfer, every offshore account. 2 minutes ago, I sent it all to FinCEN and Interpol. The Treasury Department is probably freezing accounts as we speak. Asterisk the man's cultured voice cracked. Do you have any idea what you've done? I do. That's why I did it. Double quotes 30-8 minutes until the story broke. His phone buzzed. They're moving. Strike teams to every major news outlet. Going to try to physically stop the releases. Too late. Cohen typed back. Amanda Chen was smarter than that. The stories are being uploaded from hundreds of locations. Dead man's switches everywhere. He drove through Chicago's streets, watching police cars and federal vehicles racing past. The city was waking up to chaos. His phone rang again. Amanda, they took the whole floor, she said quietly. But the team is safe. Everything's uploaded through secure channels. 28 minutes. Asterisk, get out of there. Already gone. Using the tunnel you showed me. She paused. My sister would be proud of this day. Yes, she would. The cultured voice called again. Name your price, he said without preamble. Anything. We can still stop this. Can you bring back Karen Wilson's kids? Can you give Tom Wilson back his life? Don't be naive. The system exists for a reason. Without control, there's chaos. I'll take chaos over murder. 15 minutes. His phone buzzed, multiple targets saved. Strike teams flying blind. But they're switching to analog communications, old school. Cohen had expected this. He typed back, to slow. They can't coordinate nationally with runners and radios. Asterisk. The first leaks started appearing on social media. Pictures of documents, screenshots of financial records. The dam was beginning to break. 10 minutes. Sarah called again. The news, Dad. Are these files real? Did they really? All of it? Every death, every cover-up? Uncle Joey's watching too. He says you should run. They'll never stop hunting you. I know, princess. But some things are worth the price. 5 minutes. The cultured voice, one last time. They're coming for you now. Our best teams, even without communications. They'll find you. Probably. But in 4 minutes, none of that will matter. You could have been rich, protected. Like Tom Wilson was protected, like Margaret Hayes. 1 minute. Cohen parked his car near Lake Michigan. In the distance, he could see federal vehicles converging on his location. They'd tracked his phone, exactly as he'd planned. Asterisk, the burner phone buzzed one last time. Get ready. Across the country. At exactly 9 a.m. Eastern Time, every major news outlet simultaneously published the story. 30 years of corruption exposed, names named, money traced, deaths explained. The cultured voice called, sounding older now. My God, what have you done? I told the truth. Something you should have tried sometime. Cohen got out of his car, walking toward the lake. Behind him, he could hear vehicles screeching to a halt, men shouting orders. His regular phone rang. Sarah. Dad, the news, everyone's seeing it. All of it. I know, princess. What do we do now? Cohen watched the federal agents approaching, weapons drawn. Now we let the truth do what it does best. And what's that? Change everything. He dropped his phones into the lake and raised his hands as the agents surrounded him. In the distance, sirens wailed across the city as the biggest story in 30 years exploded across every screen. In America, Tom Wilson had been right. Some things you can't walk away from, and some truths are worth any price. The sun rose higher over Chicago as they led him away in handcuffs, but Cohen was smiling, because somewhere in America, hundreds of people who had been marked for death would live to see another day. And the truth, finally, was free. 2 months later, Sarah sat in the prison visiting room, sliding a newspaper across the table to her father. The headline read, Supreme Court Justice and 3 federal judges indicted in decades-long conspiracy. They're falling like dominoes, Cohen said, looking tired but peaceful. How's Uncle Joey? Back at work. The police department reinstated him with honors. She smiled. The Reuters team won a Pulitzer. Amanda Chen dedicated it to her sister. Cohen nodded, thinking of Tom Wilson, Margaret Hayes, and all the others who died trying to expose the truth. His last message from the mysterious texter had come the day of his arrest. Worth it. He'd replied with one word before dropping the phone in the lake. Always. How long? Sarah asked, holding his hand. With good behavior. 10 years. He squeezed her hand. Small price for the truth. As Sarah left the prison that day, her phone buzzed with a text from an unknown number. Your father saved 317 lives that day. Some truths are worth any price. She deleted the message, smiling. Outside, the sun was shining on a slightly more honest world.